for some updates. Now, we've been discussing also regarding Apple's situation for quite some time, right? It all started with the issue with Epic in their App Store, right? For charging them the 30%. Now, obviously, Epic is a big giant gaming developer, the creators of the Unreal Engine. So, a lot of developers are depending on the engine itself to continue to prosper in the Apple iOS or in the App Store market, right? So it's Epic who's against Apple. Then you hear Microsoft and Facebook regarding the cloud gaming apprehension of Apple because they don't get to control what's the content there and they don't get a cut on every game that's being released. So who's next? It's now other countries are now stepping in. So here we have an article, developers from Japan, which is the epicenter of gaming for many developing games, are getting scrutinized. They're asking for the government, the antitrust watchdog to take a look with this situation. Now, obviously, a gaming company may be limited in terms of its leverage to deal with Apple, maybe with the exception of Amazon. But if a government were to step in and to regulate how Apple conducts its practices in terms of charging a 30% fee, but what fee are they charging it for? Is it for the protection of the consumer? But you're limiting the market of what types of apps are being implemented here, and it's now the creators are breaking their silence with the Apple issue here. And one of the main what do you call this? What they're contending here is the inconsistencies, right? They create rules and practices, so to speak, and it's not consistent. They make exceptions with the case of the 30% fee that they charge to every developing game or app, but for Amazon, because they want to attract the customer base that Amazon has, they're willing to lower the cost a bit from 10 to 20. So, where's the consistency there? Now, for the developing apps here, as I mentioned, for the Japan game makers, there are being complaints and questions on how to counter their dominance, right? And they've been providing inconsistent App Store guidelines. And it's unpredictable in terms of its content decision, meaning sometimes they would say, we would allow this, then would change their mind and would not allow it all of a sudden. Now, obviously, if there's uncertainty in any decision making, it makes it difficult for developers here to create a game. Then what if you were to create a game based on the prescribed guidelines that you mentioned earlier, then you were to shift or change your mind later on? Then obviously Apple gets to dictate the terms because they're the one in charge. Now, should they be in charge in the first place? Because if you're Apple, you should be monetizing it, yes, but should you be the one be in charge, or let someone be in charge of taking care of how App Store is? Like in the case of Google, right? Google is able to communicate with their developers much easier, right? If they have a problem with the App Store there, they can always create their own app outside of the Google App Store, right? And make it easier, right? And it's opened a lot of can of worms for Apple. And wouldn't it be nice that they were able to communicate to all developers that this is the prescribed guidelines, this is what we want, you follow this, and then that's it, right? Everyone's happy at the end of the day. But obviously, Apple's now being singled out, and they're the only one benefiting from this, while the consumers are losing, right? The perception that you're charging more, then the developers are clamoring for your downfall, and so that is our downfall, but for better regulation and so forth. That's why Apple, Google, Amazon, they're in this antitrust issue because of their monopoly or duopoly in their case here, right? And a good example here is Square Enix, right? 40% of their revenue is on the online games here. So Bandai Namco is another. They have roughly 700,000 developers. That's a lot of people. So if there's no inconsistency here, they can affect the bottom line, especially for a startup creator. And you can see here that There's another issue where gamers, creators or developers or publishers have to borrow money from another company, but it's another topic altogether. And this is a very lucrative industry. It generates almost $40 billion in revenue, right? And as I mentioned, how come Android doesn't get as much notoriety in terms of its interaction with its developers? I think that's something Apple should try to implement or adopt. Otherwise, this is not going well for them.